To understand the future of energy, we must understand what will happen in China, because it will affect us all. Our member of the ONS International Advisory Board, Dr. Xavier Chen, President of the Beijing Energy Club, shares his reflections on the topic in a conversation with ONS Project Manager Anne Eka.
So Javier, how different does the Chinese energy market look currently compared to about a year ago?
Well, that's a good question, Anna. I would like to highlight 4 aspects of differences. The first is demand-wise. Instead of steady growth this time last year, we saw a dip in energy demand in the first quarter as the GDP, Chinese GDP dropped 6.8% in the first quarter. So energy demand also dropped. Then we saw a slow recovery in the second quarter as GDP recovered. Chinese GDP recovered to positive 3.2%. And then now I would say almost back to normal, but certainly not as strong and steady as last year. So that's the first point on demand. Second, quite interesting to watch, the energy imports grow very rapidly. First quarter this year, coal imports grew almost 13%, largely due to the loss of domestic production because of pandemic. So imports of coal to compensate the loss of domestic production. And then second, crude oil imports increased by 10%. I believe this goes to the stocks in China because oil price was very low this year. So they take the benefit of this to fill the stocks. The third aspect is transition. Energy transition, I'm happy to say, keeps momentum. Renewables, in particular solar and wind, grow very fast. First half this year, power generation from solar increased 20% compared to last year. Wind power also increased 10%. So that's quite remarkable. The fourth aspect of difference, as you may know, China established a new national oil and gas pipeline company in December last year. So this was a very important step in the country's oil and gas reform. The objective is to build and run China's oil and gas transmission network more efficiently to provide undiscriminated access by both suppliers and consumers. So compared to last year, now we have a new giant called the China National Oil and Gas Pipeline Company. So these are the 4 differences I can highlight now compared to last year.
Very interesting, and very interesting to hear how you talk about the increase in renewables. Yet some analysis, they suggest that the COVID-19 will substantially impact China's energy plans with regards to diminishing the role of coal as part of the Chinese energy mix and also making an upgrade of China's climate ambitions challenging. So can you share some further reflections on this?
Yeah, here I would like to share perhaps 2 points. The first point is that coal has a very prominent role in China's energy mix. But we should recognize the huge efforts China made in diminishing the role of coal in energy mix. Coal had 72% share in China's energy mix in 2007, so 72%. It dropped to 57% in 2019. So 15 percentage points drop in 12 years. That's really remarkable. So that's the first point. Second, yes, it's tempting to go back to coal for economic recovery, but I don't think China should and will go back to coal for a number of reasons. First, the core users already experienced broader benefits of coal replacement by gas, by much cleaner other fuels in industry and the residential sectors. For example, if you replace coal by gas in an industrial boiler, you not only make the plant more efficient, cleaner, you save also a lot of space, So this land is very valuable in all these city and industrial sites. So that's broader benefits of coal replacement. Second, there is a strong commitment by the government to reduce local air pollution and also to reduce CO2 emission. So these commitments today still valid, stays there. Third, one needs to watch, I think, the coal use in power generation, because this is considered as the cleanest way of using coal. But without CCS, massive use of coal for power generation could still be an issue. So we still need to find a way to capture, store, and use the CO2 from power stations. So this is an ongoing challenge. And then I think it's important for China to keep the cap on energy transition, to not allow coal to come back as main fuel in China's energy mix. And I don't think this will come back. I believe that we will see coal's share in total energy mix from last year's 57% to below 50% in the coming years.
Thank you. So you've alluded to this. So from what I take from this, if you were to predict, the effect of COVID and looking at the future of China energy in the longer term, you're fairly optimistic that the positive developments may continue. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive, always positive towards the future.
Very good. So some say, let's talk a bit more about the energy transition. So some people say that COVID-19 will cause the energy transition to speed up tremendously, and others say no, exactly the opposite. What's your take on this, both with regards to the global situation and to China, of course, in particular?
Yeah, well, I would offer on the Chinese energy transition, offer 3 points here. The first point that China matters critically to global energy transition by its sheer size. China is the world's largest energy producer and largest consumer, largest power producer, and largest oil importer, and also largest gas importer, certainly largest CO2 emitter. So there is no success for global energy transition if there is no Chinese success in energy transition. So that's the first point. China matters very critically to global energy transition. Second, remarkable progress has been achieved. I mentioned that from 2007 to 2019, the share of coal in energy mix dropped 15% points. I should also mention that over last 10 years, from 2009 to 2019, the share of non-fossil fuels, that includes nuclear, hydro, and also renewables, increased from 8.5% to 15.3%. So that's 7% points growth over 10 years. So this growth rate is 4 times the global average. So that's also remarkable. The third point I want to share is there are more ambitious targets being set for 2050. China always take a long-term approach. So we are in the process of elaborating 2050 plans. We are talking about 3 50% targets, 50% targets. The first 50% target is non-fossil fuels will account for more than 50% in China's energy mix. So today is the 15.3%. 2050 targets is more than 50%. Second, nuclear and renewables will account for more than 50% in China's power generation. So the first 50% is energy mix, second percent is renewables in power sector, more than 50%. The third 50% is with regard to electrification. Electricity will account for over 50% of China's total final energy consumption. So this is the long-term targets. So how do you achieve these targets? Here comes with my 7D theory. So I've developed a 7D theory. I want to quickly elaborate. One is called digitalization. Second is decarbonization. Third is decentralization. Fourth is diversification of both technology means and also actors in the energy system. Fifth is democratization. People will have a choice of which energy they will use. So democratization of energy choices. Sixth is deregulation towards more market-driven energy regulatory system. The last D is the seventh is called depollution. That's to clean up the energy system, make it much cleaner. So I believe these 7 Ds will firmly drive China's energy transition, but the speed of which will depend on how the regulatory system will allow this transition and these 7 Ds to drive. So this is my long answer to your interesting question.
Very interesting, and it sounds like both industry and government and everybody needs to work together to achieve all of this. Regretfully, we come to a point where we have to wrap up a very interesting conversation, but I wanted to end up with a final question, which actually includes a D as well. In what ways do you think the global energy market will look differently coming out of the current situation? And we're looking globally.
Well, I think despite the recent low oil price shocks, I continue to believe that the oil and gas will have a future in the energy system, at least over the next 30 years, because humans need energy. Oil and gas make up over half of the global energy supply. Energy transition is a slow and gradual process. It can't happen overnight. So energy market is part of a globalized economy, globalized world. Out of pandemic, I'm afraid that the world will not be as global as before, given the current tension, in particular tension between China and the US. So in a fragmented world, many questions arise as how the world can respond to common threats, like climate destabilization, energy market volatility, and also to work together, to face those common challenges. So what I think out of the pandemic, there may be 4 points, whether difference or continuity. I think the first point that the oil and gas will continue to flow where demand is. The volume of this demand will change depending on economic activity levels. Second, there will be more demand on electricity. And this is driven by electrification of transport and also to drive the new digital infrastructure, like the video conference that we have now. Third, there will be more efforts on new technologies, solar, wind, batteries, hydrogen. So there will be more digital applications in the energy system, in particular in the electricity market, that will reshape the energy markets in the future. But the most striking difference, I think we will see, is from the global governance aspects. Energy market governance, OPEC is no more effective if it is alone. It needs OPEC plus and plus plus. So I believe that there will be a chance to reshape the global energy governance. So in addition to the current players, China as the largest oil importer, largest gas importer, needs to be part of this global energy governance. So this is what I see the continuity and the differences after the pandemic for global energy markets.
Very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Xavier, for sharing very interesting perspectives. And no doubt we need to follow closely what's happening in China, given the importance it will have for the global energy markets. Thank you so much.